Beautiful, you, and you. Right. And we should be live. Hello. How is everybody doing? How's things? I'm gonna tilt the camera up ever so slightly because just slightly cut my head off. Hello. How's everybody doing? How's things? How's your week been? How's life, the universe, and everything? Are you a multi-millionaire yet? Thanks to Reddit. Somehow. Hello, no copyright, and hello, Maximilian. So no copyright. It depends where you are. In reality, the performance difference, even at 1080p between the 10850K and a 15900X, probably isn't going to be super massive. The GPU is going to be more important. With that said, are you asking for a recommendation of a GPU as well? I'm really not sure. But yes, hello. Hello to Carnivorous Swarm. How you doing, man? How's things? Hello, Jim. I have a new laptop with me. It is actually doubly interesting because it's both a Ryzen 5000 laptop and it is an NVIDIA RTX 3000 laptop. So yeah, I'm excited, and I actually had the last gen Intel version of this laptop in very recently, and I'm very excited to see how the performance compares, because it had the 10980HK, which was basically Intel's topmost mobile CPU, and this one, does this one have the, I'm gonna work out which CPU it has, hold on. It does, it has the 5900HX, yes, and the 3080, so yeah, pretty sweet. And it's also the Zephyrus Duo, which means that it's got 2 screens. Although sadly, it's not the 300Hz one. That's the only downside. It's the Zephyrus Duo. This one is the QS or GS or whatever model, the top end one with the 5900HX and the RTX 3080. I have a limited budget. Your opinions on a Palette 1660 Ti Storm X and the most appropriate CPU for gaming. Can it support 144Hz gaming too? So I haven't used a Palette GPU in like almost 10 years, so I can't tell you on that front, although the 1660 Ti is a reasonable card. In terms of can it support 144Hz gaming, I'm assuming 144Hz at 1080p, in which case yeah, should be okay. And the best CPU for that sort of thing can also vary. The i5-10400F has dropped so much in value that it's actually a pretty reasonable option. If you can find a Ryzen 3300X, that's also great, or a Ryzen 3600 or 3600X are all good shouts. Cameron loved the recent video about older graphics card comparisons. The graphs are really useful and interesting. Awesome, thanks. I'm glad that you like it. It was a lot of work, but I'm very happy with how it turned out, and I definitely got to learn more about especially the games and which ones are more CPU bottleneck than others, and just how both well and not well the older cards perform. So yeah, it's I'm glad you liked it. I enjoyed making it too. Is the 5600X going to bottleneck a 3080, or should I save up more for a 5800X? So my response to all bottlenecking questions is bottlenecking isn't simple. It's not a case of slow CPU, fast GPU means CPU is terrible bottleneck, and slightly faster CPU will mean infinitely more performance. It's a scale. It's a a balance, and it depends on the game. Like I was mentioning with that graphics card comparison, some of the graphics cards, like some of the games I was testing, no matter what CPU you have, I was basically getting almost the same performance with a 1660 Ti as I was with a GTX 1070 because the CPU was that much of a bottleneck in Cyberpunk and Watch Dogs, whereas in COD Modern Warfare, it basically didn't care, and it's pretty standard as to, you know, a 3060 Ti is going to be way more performance than a 1070, and 1070 is going to be a little bit faster than a 1060. So there's a lot of factors. Generally speaking, the 5600X is very similar in its especially gaming performance to the 5800X. So grand scheme of things, 5600X is going to be fine, and you can always upgrade it later if you need to. But yeah, that's my that's the long answer, I suppose. The short one is no, it's fine. You know what some people bottleneck for the Rose? The monitor. Rigs, I assume. Yeah, that's pretty fair. The number of people that are still running 1080p is actually kind of high, especially when they've got new like 30 series or RX 6000 series GPUs. How much money have you made from GME? None, sadly. I should have invested yesterday. I want to double my money. Nah, I think I'm gonna sit out of that one. It's a bit too volatile. Hello Spencer. Hello Phil. Hello to yet another user. Hello to F7. Hello to Liam. Jaja. Hi. How you doing, man? Still have a 1650 Super. What GPU will improve my gaming and editing without spending too much when they're back in stock? So honestly, buying a used GPU is probably your best bet there, because it is there's going to be more of them available. The used market is slightly inflated at the moment, much like GameStop stock, but it's like you should still be able to buy a, I don't know, GTX 1070 or 1080 for not too much money. I think with a 1650 Super, you are probably you're looking for that sort of GTX 1070 or so performance or higher. So for example, you could buy, actually for current pricing, you might even be able to buy things like an RX 5600 XT or 5700 on the used market instead. So yeah, that's probably a good shout. Should I buy some shares in GameStop? It's probably a very bad idea. Especially with all of the order halting that's going on. So probably not, but if you can, maybe. It's not investment advice. Hello Simon, how you doing, man? I dropped my ramen noodles broth on the CPU. Any help? Rice on everything, and then if you cook it up nicely, you know, you can turn the CPU on, heat it up nicely, you can get a nice sort of added broth going, you know. That's in all seriousness, no isopropyl alcohol. Good evening, I'm installing an Arctic LF2 280. Nice. It'll only fit in the front of the Fractal design. I worry if the fans will provide enough intake air. Should I keep the fans constantly spinning? The front, putting the fans at the front, especially if you're using the ones that came with the CPU, with the cooler, are likely going to be, high static pressure fans to draw air through, and so that will give you a good amount of air volume inside the case. The flow might not be quite as fast as, you know, unimpeded airflow fans, but either way, you're going to have enough air inside the case to cool the rest of the components. And whether you should keep them running on, full stop, like full time, it's probably more of a question of what thermals you're getting on various components. So try adjusting the fan curve so that, for example, your CPU temperature is, if it's 40 to 50 degrees Celsius, it's lower off, and then above that it slowly ramps up. and see how that goes. If it ends up staying on all the time, then you can generally surmise that it needs to stay on, basically. So yeah. Can I ask what are the best settings for a G-Sync monitor? Should I use V-Sync to cap my FPS? What's best? So you can do. Using V-Sync to cap your FPS at the maximum supported by your monitor is generally a reasonable idea. There is potentially some benefit to leaving G-Sync on but having higher than monitor refresh rates, frame rates being drawn, because you're more likely to have a more recent frame available to you, especially in ultra high FPS games like CSGO, where essentially the graphics card can just pick whatever the very most recent frame is, draw that one, and by the time it's ready to draw the next one, your graphics card will have drawn 2 or 3 more. Generally speaking, you can leave it off. You might get a slightly more seamless experience or with V-Sync on, but for me personally, I leave it off. And as for G-Sync settings, set it to both windowed and full screen. What size IPS monitor should I go with? And what IPS monitor refresh rate, 240Hz or 280? The size normally is dictated by what resolution. So if you want to go with 1080p, then 24.5 is normally the way you'd head. Or if you want to go with 1440p, then 27 inches where you'd head. I suppose the problem you would run into there is that I don't think that there are any 27-inch IPS 240Hz monitors. There are that sort of monitor, but with VA panels. But if you want IPS, then I think 1080p is your only option there, I believe. I could be wrong, because I don't tend to follow the ultra high refresh rate market all that much. But yeah, that would be my answer to that. Any idea why a GPU would hit 60 degrees? Only hit 60 degrees under load. It's just a stock cooled card. I have a lot of fans, but I've never seen it go over 62. Couple of things it could be, especially if it's one of the more like basic cards. It might be factory locked in its boost profile, because normally you want when I say factory locked, it probably has a fairly low power target built into it, which means that if it's hitting that power target, it really isn't trying that hard, and if you're cooling it well, then even better. But yeah, that's probably it. If you can probably squeeze out a fair bit more performance out of that card using something like MSI Afterburner or one of the other overclocking tools. So yeah. What's your favorite handheld console? Switch doesn't count. I don't own a Switch. In fact, I don't think I own any handheld consoles these days. So my vote goes to Game Boy Advance, because that's the one that I had as a kid, and I absolutely love Pokemon. What do you think about the Razer Blade Advanced thermals? So I've reviewed the Razer Blade Advanced, and I talked about my opinion on that in that video, so feel free to check out. Long story short, it runs pretty hot because it's disgustingly thin, and they pack what I would argue is probably too much power into a thin chassis, and so it ends up thermal throttling like crazy, both the CPU and the GPU, and the fact that they still haven't gone with Ryzen means that the amount of heat dissipation from the CPU is insane, and so yeah, that's it. It's not great. The one thing that they do well is that they do avoid any heat transfer through to the actual keyboard itself, or for the majority of it, but the inch above the keyboard is blisteringly hot and can literally burn you, so don't touch that bit of the top plate. How much FPS can you gain with a Fantex neon LED strip? Oh, well, was it RGB is 200% more performance, right? So clearly 200%. Hello, Joe. How you doing, man? I had a good 10 minutes of it basically down my road basically. So yes, yeah, I did. For those of you who don't know, I run a car channel as well, and it snowed here, and I have an all-wheel drive car, and I turned off stability control, and I was having fun in the snow basically. It was great, and I did a video about how to drive in the snow, so feel free to check that out. Spencer, oh yes, I really used to like the Rocat Sova, but I don't think that that's been sold for absolutely ages. So I would assume the Corsair Lapdog and whatever keyboards fit in that these days. But you say alternative to the K63s, so, yeah. Whatever fits in whatever lapboard you want, really, because otherwise it doesn't really work. What's your PC build count? I'm at over 50. Honestly, I have no idea, and that's one of those questions that what counts as a PC build? Like, does me swapping out a motherboard and graphics card count as a PC build? And I have to take the CPU cooler out, but the power supply and like SSD stays in the case. Does that count? Because if it does, then I built like a million this week. No. But yeah, if you mean full builds, then probably yeah, like 50 or 100. If things like swapping out a motherboard counts, then a lot more. So yeah, I think I have like 20 built systems like in the house. So that's the starting metric. Can you tell me acceptable CPU temps during gaming? 54 degrees Celsius is more than fine. Anything under like 80 is reasonable. I think I normally set at 60 to 70. I've kind of a terrible airflow in my handmade case. So yeah, but yeah, anything under 80 is normally fine, or if you're in a laptop, anything under 100. It's an Aorus 3090 Master, so I'd assume it's not that. In that case, correct. It's probably just because it's a decent airflow and what you call it, decent airflow and a reasonably well forming card, and potentially some other bottlenecks in your system that mean that the graphics card isn't trying all that hard. I have 16 gigs of RAM installed, and I bought another 16 gigs. Should I pop it in and just pop it in, enable XMP, and it should work, right? So Tim, the main question I would ask there is it the same kit, or is it the same timings and frequency? Ideally the same manufacturer and model as well. If you ask Microsoft, changing a USB counts as a new build. Oh, the number of times that I've like activated Windows and then swapped out like graphics card or motherboard, and it's gone, and I'm like, I have to re-add the key and then like call them up or whatever to make it work. Pain. It's also the reason why I don't bother with like installing what you call activating Windows on test systems, because the second you swap out a motherboard, the key is invalid, and I'd be spending thousands of pounds a month just on Windows licenses. So same kit. In that case, then yes, definitely pop them in. Should be able to enable XMP with no problems, and yeah. Nice one, Mark. Glad your monitor's on the way. Asus TUF motherboards, any good? Does it have any advantages compared to lower end boards? It really depends on what board you're talking about in particular. Generally speaking, with motherboards, it's a trend of the more money you spend, the more connectivity, the better power delivery, and then you start getting into the gimmicky things. But more connectivity and power delivery for the CPU are the two kind of more important ones to look at. Thoughts on upcoming AMD APUs? I honestly haven't seen much in the rumor mill about them. The obvious assumption would be Zen 3 hardware with was it Navi iGPUs? I would assume. In that case, should be pretty interesting, and I will be interested to see what the performance is like, and if they offer a 6-core variant. That would be very good to see. Can I use 3 sticks? You can, but why? Also, make sure that they are the same sticks, the same frequency and timings, because if they aren't, then you won't be able to enable XMP, or at least enable XMP properly. Have I ever built my own keyboard? I have not. I was considering it for a little bit, and at some point I will do a video on building a custom mechanical board, but today is not that day. People have no clue what goes on behind the scenes in our line of work. It's not all butterflies and freebies. Indeed. The number of hours that I spend sitting in that chair, waiting for benchmark runs to finish, or like rerunning benchmark numbers because it just doesn't make sense, is unbelievable. I think I spent 3 full days benchmarking the 1070, 1060, 3060 Ti because the benchmark results didn't make sense at all. I think I reran a couple of the benchmarks like 10 or 20 times just to be sure, and sure enough, it's still the same weird ass results. I've only received 2 butterflies and a moth. Quality. Oh, and yeah, he does ish. I get it too, to be honest, but obviously not to the same scale. With the RAM, better to have 4x8 or 2x8 for gaming. I'm gonna assume you mean 4x4, because 4x8 would give you double the amount of RAM. But the answer is it can vary. Generally speaking, more sticks give slightly better performance, often at the cost of easier upgradability later. So in my case, I went from 4 sticks of 8 gigs, making 32, but I needed more, and so I had to swap out all 4 sticks for 4 sticks of 16 gig to get 64 instead. So you have to swap them all out rather than just having, say, 2 8s and being able to add another 2 to make it 34, or 2 16s and being able to add another 2 later for 64 total. Yeah. How do you get into PC building? Self-taught? Yeah, like watching YouTube videos, basically. The channel started because me and a couple of friends had all built our first gaming PCs, and the way that we learned to build them was from watching people like Linus, and we thought that it'd be kind of fun to do, so we just started making videos, having fun, and 9 years later, Jesus, old. Well, welcome to the channel. So yeah, I had a question lined up to read, but forgotten about it. I want to say thank you. Took your advice, changed my stock cooler, and temperature's now lower. Awesome, nice one. I'm glad. That's good to see. Have you seen ASRock's new X370 Jupiter all-in-one mini PCs for Ryzen APUs 1 liter? I think I got the presser for that. Yeah, it's mental. I'm kind of hoping that they do the like GTX or an RTX version again. That would be very sweet. But yeah, definitely looks cool. Have you had any updates on 11th gen yet? I haven't. In theory, I'm on the press list, but in practice, I do have a Z590 board already from ASRock, and I'm doing a video. Was it this week? Oh no, it's tomorrow, isn't it? I'm doing a video tomorrow on Z590 and explaining what it's all about, the differences, CPU compatibility, and that sort of stuff with that Z590 board. So that will be there. Yeah. Yeah, no CPU, unfortunately. Not yet, anyway. Does Intel Rocket Lake S11700K, whatever, make sense for people without a discrete GPU, as they're paired with new XE graphics? So it kind of depends what you want to do with it, right? If you're doing, kind of effectively basic system usage, then sure. Although the 1100K or the 700K is probably a little on the high end for that. If you mean for gaming, then I would suggest no. The XE graphics are better, but they're certainly not good, if that makes sense. They're still not really at the point where you would legitimately consider gaming on them, unless you're willing to game it at like 720p low settings or maybe 1080p low. So yes and no. And if you're doing things like video editing, potentially, but then the amount of graphics acceleration that you get from having a dedicated GPU is fairly substantial. So again, depends on what you're after. PCIe Gen 4, yeah, pretty much. One of the interesting things though is that because of the expanded DMI link, the DMI 3.0 8x link to the chipset on Z590 boards, in theory that means that you can run 3 Gen 3 SSDs, or a Gen 4 SSD in the top slot, which should now be routed direct to the CPU, and 2 Gen 3 SSDs in the bottom slots without bottlenecks, which before you couldn't run 1 Gen 3 SSD without bottlenecks, let alone 3. So that's kind of cool to see, but yeah. Do you have any info on this Robinhood stuff that everybody's been moaning about today? I've been following it for a little bit. I suppose the long story short is a multi-billion dollar hedge fund decided to take a bet on GameStop stock, and somehow managed to it's called shorting, betting that the stock price will go down. They managed to short 130% of the available stock somehow, and then basically when they got when people on basically Reddit noticed that, from publicly available information I should add, saw that they were in this very essentially vulnerable position. If everybody on Reddit decided to buy some of that stock, well, the stock price would go up and the hedge fund would effectively go bankrupt because of their terrible, idiotic betting decision. And so that's what happened. But the apps like Robinhood and other trading platforms have some, for whatever reason, decided to stop letting people buy, like it's called retail investors, individuals, buy those stocks. You could argue that that's market manipulation and that they could be fined, sued, regulated out of existence for doing that. But essentially, if no one buys that stock anymore, the price will go back down because supply and demand. And if it goes back down, the hedge funds can all be saved, who all have a sizable interest in the stock price going back down. But yeah. I found those Cyberpunk CPU benchmarks you did really interesting. I especially like the blue lines moving down the edge, telling how much screen time will be. Yes, that's something that I've seen from other people like Gamers Nexus, and found that pretty useful. So thought that'd be a good addition to add as well. So yeah, glad you found it interesting and liked it. I hope that that is I can do more of that in the future, basically. Did you have some fun in the snow? I did a video about it. I shot some nice high speed. It basically snowed. I was actually away from home when the snow started coming down. I just about managed to get home. Sat for a bit, went outside and started messing around in the snow basically, and then realized, oh, I could get in my car. I could film it. Oh. And then I made a video. Turns out, even with all-wheel drive, ES and ESC off, if you plant your foot with 330 horsepower, it just spins. Oh, and summer sports tires. Has Sam resizable bar support rolled out for your X570 motherboard? It might have done, actually. I seem to remember, even with when the 5th gen BIOS upgrades came out, I was seeing resizable bar support available on those boards. So I think so. Carol's like Bambi on ice. It was. It's great. 11th gen seems kind of DOA, just like KB like, Coffee like. I would say, like, yes and no. The I suppose concern I would have is with the the performance that they're showing, looks great and all, but it is, I can only assume that they're probably cherry picking, and that bit's the bit that worries me. Also, oh, chat's repeating itself again. That's what's happening. Is YouTube chat working for you normally? Like, is the actual chat on your screen working normally? Because for me, it hasn't moved, but this is repeating over and over and over again. So so for me, I refresh my browser and it's like, I'm not seeing any new messages. So I'm gonna have to read them off that screen. Okay, I'm gonna keep refreshing and see what happens. Cool. In that case, apologies if I miss any of your questions, because not showing up. I might open up another window and have chat on a different browser and see if that helps. Mute the tab. There we go. I got it on a different window. Nice one, Simon. I'm glad your 3080 finally shipped. Hope it gets to you soon. Let me know how performance is like on that. Just use your summer tires on snow. Don't even need to deactivate ESC. No. So the thing is that remarkably, even in the summer tires, thanks to all-wheel drive, it legitimately was pretty easy for me to get off the line kind of thing. Yeah, it's like it was pretty simple. It was the coming to a stop that was a problem. Any amount of brake pressure and it would lock up. Nice one, Mark. Can you help me with my Model O mouse, please? So I should clarify, I'm not like tech support, like, like company tech support. You can't like send me things and I'll repair them for you. That's a job for whoever you bought the mouse from. in terms of what I can do to help you, I'm not entirely sure. If you've broken it in terms of like it's dirty, if it's still in warranty, sending it back is probably the best shout. Otherwise, like, what do you call it? Having, if it's not in warranty, then opening it up and repairing it, cleaning it out manually, with a bit of isopropyl alcohol or whatever else might be a good shout. Undervolting Ryzen chips, yes or no? As far as I'm aware, they're pretty receptive to it. Ryzen Clock Tuner or whatever else, those programs should give you a good idea of where to set with that. Or even in, it's not Wattman, that's the graphics card one, Ryzen Master might work as well. At least it's not as bad as the Nvidia processor out of stock. True. Why is there so many less options with 75% mechanical keyboards? Because the majority of the market, at least for the moment, still has full-size keyboards, and so it's kind of supply and demand, unfortunately. Product launches have been tricky as of late. Yeah, like that's definitely a fair point these days, especially because if we actually have a card, well, we actually have the card rather than a lot of people who won't have access to them at all by comparison. So yeah, unfortunate. All drives to help get off, but braking performance is the same. Indeed. I'll get a set of winter for snow fun going up mountains. Fair. If I had a garage, I would definitely get a set of summer tires, a set of winter wheels and tires, and swap them over in the winter months. But I don't. So yeah. Also badly needed a VGA. I think. Well, fair play. There is some stock of varying cards. The 3070 seems to actually be in more stock than a lot of others. Spencer, in terms of 3080 or 6800 XT, those are the ones that seem to be terminally out of stock or out of stock more, which is actually kind of a surprise, but I guess keep an eye on the usual retailers, I'm afraid. Hello, Lou Namer. Hi. Have you seen the new Jerry Harris? I have. It looks awesome. I'm not quite sold on it. I don't know what it is about it that's not quite there for me yet, but yeah, I'm very I'm definitely interested in it for sure. It looks awesome. I used the "if I had a garage" line for years. The reality is that if I had, there are more prams and buggies in the garage now than in the one that I have than there are car parts. Yeah, that's yeah. Recommendation for high airflow case for a very hot system. Any of the new mesh options from the wide range of people. I really like Fantex. Wow, that's wow. I really like Fantex cases in general. They're generally very easy to build in, well thought out, all that sort of stuff. And I think there is a new airflow version of it's either the P400 or P500 or one of those cases. It has a high airflow mesh front. So that'll be good. Otherwise, Corsair has a new airflow case. Who else? Brain's gone blank. Meshify C? Have you seen the new entry-level Ferrari? Is that the Roma? I have. Looks alright. I'm never, like... I think I was most interested in Ferraris when I was between age 10 and like 15. Since then, I've kind of stopped caring as much, and only really the, I guess, 458, 488. I guess now the F8 Djibouti or whatever, like that. Those are kind of exciting, but I would honestly be more like if you handed me I don't know, the keys to a 1,000 horsepower Evo, I'd probably be more excited about the Evo than I would a 1,000 horsepower SF or whatever the new Ferrari is. Yeah. Is the Intel 9100 a good processor? I would be lying if I said yes. I'm sure that it will do fine. But in terms of the performance it offers, it's not fantastic. My uncle had a Dino and it was his favourite car in the world. He sold it and got an E-Type instead, and that's become a new favourite. Nice. Fair. Is the Fantex big enough? I have a Corsair case now and it's so tiny the radiator has to be mounted to the front panel using case fans. It kind of depends what you mean. If you're looking for a full tower rather than a mid tower, then I think Cooler Master still make a full tower like H500 mesh or whatever it's called. But yeah, it's off the top of my head, I can't think of too many full tower cases with mesh fronts, but that's because I'm not really a case reviewer. I don't really review cases all that often, so the only ones that I get are the ones that I'm actively interested in, you know. But what's the Intel's FPS? It depends on what graphics card you pair it with, but not great. P508, that's the one. That's the full tower version, right? Rather than the mid tower, which is the P400s and P300s. My Corsair Scimitar mouse side buttons aren't working and I don't know how to fix it. So the short answer is probably take it apart. There's probably a couple of screws in the bottom, probably under some stickers or the PTFE, glide pads. And you can clean it out with isopropyl alcohol or whatever else, or you can just give it a good dusting. That's the most likely solution. Nice one, Joe. Fair. Of course, my favourite only Evolve X. Nice. The Evolve X is actually going to make a feature on the channel in a bit when I get my NAS hard drives in. I ordered 4. I thought they were from the UK, but turns out that they're actually in Poland, and they're now stuck in customs because of Brexit. So yeah, we'll see. What about i5 9th gen GTEC? What? Oh, for streaming, right? 10 megabits is fine for streaming. The i5 and the 1650 will be okay, especially for Valorant. Use the NV encoder. More WD Gold is the one I sent you, came from Poland too. Yes. If I'm gonna do an ass, I may as well be. I may as well keep them all the same. So I'm actually I'm using my Threadripper system, and I'm going to be throwing in some SSDs for caching as well. The objective is I want to be able to edit directly off of it while still having a good amount of redundancy. So I'm going to add my other 10 gig network card to my system, have the NAS, which will be in the Evolve X, that will be that will also have 10 gig, and I'll be editing direct off of it rather than any of the drives in my system, which means lowest possible chance of footage loss. Yeah, Joe, I've had that one before where they call you and say, you know, can you give me a value on the shipment you've got? And I'm like, what shipment? And they're like, we can't tell you. I'm like, okay, I don't know what it is, so I can't tell. It's some headphones. No idea. I get sent like 4 packages a day. Which I don't know what you want from me. Like, I don't know what it is. Tell me who sent it. Some shell company. Cool. No idea. Contact the shipper. We already have. Great. Contact them again. Bye. Is there any way to run HD 650s on a MacBook? HD 60s. HD 60s 60s like the capture card. In which case, I'm not sure if they have Mac compatibility. I'm not sure. What mics do I use? For streaming, this is the Elgato Wave 3. For recording, I use a Shure SM50 and a Rode, Zoom H1 recorder to record it. Although I do definitely want to improve audio quality for videos. It's kind of a long-standing process, and I basically just don't know enough to know what I'm doing right. I bought a Rode NTG2 and Zoom H5, but I can't get it set up right to give good audio quality, mostly because the room's just an echo chamber by comparison. Yeah. Herald, I've heard that it's living hell to use, so maybe not. Unless you're well versed in command line. Will RDNA 2 laptops be better since they're more efficient? They should be. Whether they are, whether they are efficient enough to be, you know, well competitive with the NVIDIA solutions, I'm not sure on that one. Mark, I know that overclockers had 3000 like 3070s in stock, but they moved the cards to their 3D printing section. So look under 3D printers on clockers, and you might find some in stock. What GPU? What desktop GPU can play Dirt 5 at 1440p 60 FPS? I don't think that's the most demanding game, so probably the like 3060 Ti level cards. Maybe even like 2080, 2070. You might be pushing it with 2060, I'm not sure. Depends on your settings. What's better for games and streaming, a 1050 Ti or 1650 Super? I'm pretty sure the 1650 Super is faster. Outright. Keyboard isn't working when I try and type my password. The run works and everything, but it doesn't. I'm not sure what you mean by run works. Anyone ordered stuff on AliExpress shipping for China but not coming direct to the UK? Interesting. My assumption would be that non-EU shipments shouldn't be too heavily affected, I suppose, is what I'm going for there. But I haven't ordered anything from China in a bit, so I can't tell you. What GPU options will be suitable for a Ryzen 3600 without any bottlenecks? So, like I said earlier, bottlenecking isn't simple. You can use, you know, an incredibly low-end GPU and upgrade your CPU, and you would still get more performance. You would get very little more performance, but you would still get more performance from a faster CPU. So the answer is Yeah, anything in the sort of 60 class of cards these days. So a 3060 is probably going to be fine. Or I suppose a 5700 XT would probably be decent, or 5600 XT if you want to spend a bit less money. Yeah, that would be my rough recommendation. But bottlenecking isn't a simple one size fits all solution, if you know what I mean, or problem, I suppose. Philip, just changed my rig from 2nd gen Threadripper to X570 and a 5950X. Nice one. The other day, I'm getting WHEA uncorrectable error in Windows. Checked the RAM, new OS, still persists. I've had that. What RAM speed are you running? Exposure -1. I would love to. If I try and manually adjust the exposure, it will flicker like crazy. It's a wonderful bug in their software, but yeah, it's what I've got. It should auto adjust. Like if I go really close, it'll auto dim. But if I sit just too far away, yeah, and I can't turn the light down anymore without it not being basically visible. I am planning on upgrading the camera, which will solve that problem. I just need to get around to buying another camera, which is expensive. Good CPU to go with the 2060 Super. Yeah, the Ryzen 3600. The i5 10400F is ridiculously cheap at the moment, so that's probably not a bad shout. What do you think about the RX 580 for 120 euros used? It's probably not a bad card. 120 euros for the 4 gig model might be a little pushing it if you could, but I'm sure it's fine, and should do you fairly well. They got some 1600 XTs for only £1,400. Nice quality. Anton, especially at 1080p, honestly, probably not. I would honestly buy a card from the used market instead. Buy a like GTX 1080 Ti or something, or 1070 or something like that. That should be available and will definitely give you a lot more performance than a 1030 can do. If the RX 580 was used for mining, there's a good chance that you'll probably need to at very least clean it first, and there's also a fairly big chance that it will flat out die on you. But what I would say is it's an increased risk of you losing your money, essentially. So buyer beware, really. Like, it's not the end of the world, but it is more likely to just outright fail. The chat still isn't updating for me overly well. So my apologies if I missed anything. So yeah. Oh, for the people who missed it, the laptop that I have here is a Ryzen 5000 series. It's the 5900HX, and it's an RTX 3080 as well, which I'm very excited about. I'm actually going to be doing 2 videos with this laptop. One will be the review on the or a video on the CPU, and one will be on the laptop with the graphics card kind of thing. But yeah, I'm excited. I haven't tested anything with it yet, but I literally had the last gen version of this in, and I've still got the HP Omen laptop. so I should be able to do some good comparisons there. So yeah, I'm excited. Are QLC SSDs really that bad? They're not fantastic. Beyond slightly better price per gigabyte, essentially. There's not really much benefit or reason to get one, because the TLC drives that are available are generally better and not that much more expensive at the moment, anyway. Hello, Rob. I'm glad you like the keyboard. That's awesome. Would you say having dual monitors is a good investment? Definitely. I have 3, and I love it. I can never go down in monitor numbers. I can only go up, and there will be one day where I continue to increase it. I feel like I'm an aspiring Wendell. The sort of wall of monitors around me is what I'm aspiring to have. So yeah. What do you think about this build? 1550X 3090. Yeah, sounds awesome. I mean, if you're willing to spend that much money, why put a 4TB hard drive in when you can buy the Rocket 4Q instead? And the only thing that I would say about the Asus motherboards is I haven't had the best of experiences with using Asus boards on Ryzen. Although, like I said last week, it's been a while since I've properly run an Asus board in my main system with a Ryzen chip, so things could have changed. Should I get a Gigabyte G5 or the Scan own brand one? It has 500 gig and i5 versus i7 versus i5G. So William, what graphics card does the Scan own brand one have? What should be my budget for a mid-end PC? That's really up to you. It could be, £1,000 or $1,000 or whatever. It could be more like 1,500. It really depends on, what you're after and what you consider mid-range. For someone who normally spends £3,000 on their system, £1,000 would seem low end. But for someone who the most they've ever spent on a system is £100, 1,000 is high end. That's a lot of money. So what if I clean the RX 580 and put in your thermal paste? That would definitely help and be a good recommendation for sure. But you're definitely well, like F7 says, running your luck with buying X mining cards. My motherboard's HDMI doesn't work, but my GPU HDMI does. So there's quite a number of reasons. One, that you're using a processor that doesn't have any integrated graphics. The majority of the Ryzen lineup and any of the Intel F series chips don't have integrated graphics, so it won't work. Or it could just be because you're using your graphics card primarily, which you should be. It has disabled the integrated graphics automatically. The question I would ask is probably why bother using your integrated graphics if you have a working graphics card in your system. Are you any good with keyboard knowledge? I can try. I can try for sure. £400 different. Cool. What graphics card is in the Scan one? 3060. Right. In that case, wait. So the Scan one is £400. Okay. Is the Scan one £400 more or £400 less? I just need a GPU when not in stock. I want to buy a GPU, but most sites are saying products not in stock. Where do I need to order the GPU, which is not in stock, the retailer? I think that the problem is, so does you and everybody else. You can try calling retailers to see if they have any stock or that kind of thing, but the trouble is that so will you and 100 other people today. So yeah. Does upgrading your SSD delete your files? What do you mean upgrading your SSD? Thinking of getting an i9 9900K, Z390 motherboard. Is this good hardware for games and work? Yes. It depends on your priorities, but you might be better off getting a Ryzen like 3700X and buying a like 2070 or 2070 Super instead. You'll get better performance from that. Ouch, Mark. Yeah, that's a lot. Does replacing your SSD to a better one delete the storage from your previous one? No, you would just have to copy all of the files that are on the previous one to the new one. How long do you think socket 1151 will be viable for the future? Well, the current like Z590 and Z490 don't use socket 1151, so not at all. All of the CPUs that 1151 will support are out. So yeah, Z490 and 590 use LGA 1200. Wow, the chat is just not working for me tonight. 1200 then what? Probably just more pins as usual. Or a slight variation like 1201 just to screw you. With that said, that is the usual hour, and since I cannot read any of the 4 chat windows that I have open because none of it is refreshing, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for watching. I do these every Thursday night at 8 PM UK time, so if you have any more questions, feel free to pop back next week, or if you just want to chat and hang out, feel free. I've got a video on Z590 coming out tomorrow, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Also, go check out the HP Omen laptop video, please. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. And, tomorrow for videos. See ya.